have for us in critical thinking?
Well, I'm going to tie into what I just talked about in the foggy windshield and discuss how to calculate an expected return giving different forecast scenarios. So it's just pretty simple math here, so just follow along. So we're going to talk about stocks and cash, and we're going to give it a couple of different forecasts. So when you think about the future, what kind of forecast could there be? So we're going to do forecasts, and we're going to say good and average and bad. So we've got stocks and cash in good, average, and bad economic conditions. Stocks in good economic conditions might get you 20%, average, say 8%, and bad, say minus 20%. So those kind of a range. Now, these aren't numbers that I've calculated. These are guesses, so don't hold me to them. But it'll give you an idea on how to calculate this. So let's look at cash. Cash is going to be very good in all conditions, but it's going to be very low. We're just going to say it's at 1%. So it doesn't matter what the economic conditions are, cash gets you a very low return. We're just going to average out 1%. So the way we calculate this is we take our forecast of what we think the future economy is going to be, and we multiply it by the potential outcomes and take the average of that situation. So let's add that up and summarize it. So let's do this. A good economy, an average economy, and a bad economy. Well, based on what I just said, a good economy going forward is probably 10%. Average is probably 40%. And bad, or not so good, we're going to say it's 50%. So there's a 50% chance the economy's not going to be so good, 40% chance it'll be okay, average, and there's 10% chance it'll actually be good. So now how do we calculate the expected return of these different scenarios? Well, 10% times a 20% gain in stocks gives you 2%. A 40% chance of 8% gives you 3.2%. And a 50% chance of negative 20% gives you negative 10%. If you add all these up, you get negative 4.8%, right? Negative 10% plus 5.2% is negative 4.8%. Well, 10% good at 1%, 40% at 1%, 50% at 1%, these all average 1%. So when you think of the scenarios that you're dealing with going forward, the choice between the expected return of stocks is negative 4.8%, and the expected return of cash equals 1%. Which would you rather have?
I think I'd stay with cash.
You think
it doesn't sound so good right now.
Doesn't sound so good.
Negative.
Sounds better than negative, right? So what's the key here? So the key here isn't really stocks versus cash. It's getting the forecast of what's going to happen correct. Because the numbers would clearly change if our forecast was good 90%, average 10%, and bad 0%. Well, then what would you be?
Oh, yeah, all in stocks.
All in stocks, right. So your forecast for the future, you can look forward. If you get your forecast right, it's easy to make this decision. So you're always trying to look out the future and think about where you should be positioned. The numbers just give you a guideline to figure out, oh yeah, you're right, I should be concerned about this because this is how I see the future. This is the most important thing in figuring out the expected return. And of course this works for portfolios and different stocks, and it's right out of portfolio theory. This isn't anything I've come up with. But it gives you a way to critically think about your situation. How do you see the forecast? What return would you get in each scenario? And then multiply your forecast by what return you would get, and you'll find out which scenario would be you'd be better off in.
It looks pretty clear in this.
Well, if this number's right, if that number's right, then this is the correct call. You would take cash. If this is right, you'd take stocks. It'd be 90%, 20, it'd be an 18% probability of return. Does that make sense?
Very interesting.
Yeah, so that's how you do some math to work through your problems. And of course you can work through any problem like this. You can work through, I'll give you an example. Instead of forecasting being good, average, or bad with the economy, you could do a forecast on whether your daughter's boyfriend is going to be good, average, or bad. And then you could take it against Bob and Sam and Ted, and then you can add those numbers up. Give them a grade.
That's wrong. That's just wrong.
But it'll work. It's the same
Okay.
process. Okay, so
What's your takeaway?
see, exactly. Yeah, I should be taken away. Okay, so an expected return is simply a weighted average of the probabilities of different outcomes. If you can see the value of the different choices, then it's crucial that the probabilities be correct for the decision to be correct. It's still no guarantee that the results will be what you desire, but you're putting the odds in your favor, and that's pretty much all anyone can do.